Hello, my name is Robin Hayden, and this slideshow is to give you a before and after look at our front and back gardens from our home in Alameda. Let's start with the front garden, which we did soon after we bought the house in 2012. Here's what the house looked like when we first bought it. The first thing we did was to remove the trees to give some more room for planting, and I wanted to blow up that front side walkway that went from the sidewalk to the front stairs. It was right around this time that I went to Kathy Kramer's Bringing Back the Natives garden show and fell in love with the idea of using native plants in our garden and got a tutorial on sheet mulching. And here we are, sheet mulching the front garden to kill all that Bermuda grass. You all are familiar with this process of laying down the cardboard and the compost and the mulch. So we did this in the winter of 2013. And that's what it looked like a few months later after we'd blown out the cement walkway. And for this project we worked with Liz Simpson, who was a garden designer, and she did a wonderful job. The picture on the left is her garden plan, her planting plan with the irrigation overlay on top of it. You can see we've installed a drip irrigation system. And that's Liz in the picture on the right with all the plants in the staging area ready to go in. We laid out Hamilton gray flagstones for the walkway, and we used Napa basalt rocks as occasionals and Pammy cobbles, all from American Soil and Stone, and that's Liz laying out the rocks and the flagstones. And here we have the plants kind of positioned in place, ready to go in. And here's what it looked like after we got all the plants installed. And here's what it looked like a little bit after, when the plants had grown up a bit. So to give you before and after side by side, that's the house before on the left and after on the right. So let's now move to the back garden, which we did a few years later. Our back garden was pretty much taken up by this gigantic old deck that was in pretty bad shape. And so our plan was to remove the old deck and build something much smaller and appropriately scaled to the size of the garden, and in the process reclaim some of the ground for planting. You can see in this picture, which is taken from the point of view of the house looking out, the deck pretty much takes up the whole thing all the way to those outbuildings, the garage. For this project, we worked with Jude Hawley, who's a wonderful garden designer. That's her on the right, and Bob Otterton, who was our contractor to do the deck. He did a fantastic job as well, and I included this picture because I think it was really important that the two of them collaborated together on the project about where exactly the deck would go, how big it was, where the hardscape would be, how the irrigation system would work with it all. And it turned out that their collaboration was a really big help to making it all come together. This is Jude's drawing of what she had in mind for the back garden. And here we are starting to take the deck apart. And you can see it was a giant mess. Lots of stuff to be hauled away. In fact, when we removed the old deck, we found a lot of sins underneath. There was a lot of cement we didn't even know was there, an old cement stairway, the remnants of a hot tub, a lot of pipes. So we had to jackhammer that all out and remove it, which ended up taking a lot longer than we thought. But that's what it looked like when we got it all cleared away. And now we're starting to build the new deck. That's the frame. And that's what it looked like. You can see quite a bit smaller than the old deck. And the stairway going in. And we built this little vegetable box on the top of the deck to serve as a little extra seating as well as the side of the deck. So we only really had to put a railing on one side. And that's the vegetable box lined with the plastic, and you can see the irrigation hose there. A good example of the collaboration between the contractor and the garden designer to get the irrigation system in while he was building. And there's the finished deck. It had a very clever little hidey door in the deck too, so that you could get to it underneath for storage. Bob also built this very clever potting shelf for me on the side of the house, and it's the kind of a thing that folds up when you're not using it, and then you can pull it back down again when you are using it. Here we are installing the hardscape now that the deck is built. We use the same pavers that we had in the front, Hamilton gray. There's the view of the flagstones once they're in place. And then we started planting. Used a lot of the same plants that we had in the front in order to have an echo effect between front and back. I would say the front and back garden combined now are about 65% native. And this was a little vertical garden that I decided to add to the hanging on the fence. And you can see that it's made up of, there's 4 quadrants that kind of hook together, and the pieces are plastic with 25 slots for plants in each of the 4 quadrants. So a total of 100 plants that go in there. And this is what it looks like when it's done. Each of the little slots are kind of at an angle, so it's easy to slide a plant in there, and then you run an irrigation hose across the top, and the water filters through the vertical garden to keep it moist. I play around with this thing a lot. You know, plants die or things that just don't do well in there. I've tried succulents in there and they don't do so well. It's really best with mosses and ground cover type plants. From this view, you can see the irrigation hose going up and over the top, and keeping it thriving. And there's the vegetable box, all finished with some herbs growing in there. And there's the finished garden of about a year later, I think, as the plants started to grow a bit more. And that's our front and back garden in our home in Alameda. Thank you very much.